Hello and welcome to Freya's Tropical Garden. It's such a lovely day here in Hampshire at the moment. I decided to do another garden update. Got plenty of new things growing and plenty of jobs that I've had to do. So I've been listening to your comments and you've suggested that you'd like to see me do a longer video. So this is what I'm going to try and do today, but I really appreciate your feedback. So can you let me know in the comments below how you feel that this has gone? And I'm going to start today's video by showing you some of the flowers that have come out in my garden. We've got these beautiful anemones. And even though my azalea is still very small, it's got masses of buds all over it now. The flowers on this Brunera are very attractive, especially from a distance. And this beautiful clump of tulips called Peppermint stick close their petals in the evening, which is known as thermonasty. My arum lilies are now starting to flower. And my spotty dotty have got lots of flower buds underneath the leaves, however they haven't started to open yet. But I will show you the flowers when they do. We've cut back our Wisteria quite hard this year, but it has got a few buds starting to come through. My tower lilies are growing quite tall, but there's no flowers on those yet. But on my gunnera, quite close down to the bottom of the ground, you can see my first flower, which I'm really excited about. I've just checked my photos from last year and my gunnera is already much bigger than it was at the end of last year. I've got a couple of clumps of ginger in my garden and you can see that it's starting to shoot now. I've got a couple of varieties of hardy ginger in the ground now. However, I've lost labels and I cannot remember what varieties they are. My Colocasia pink china is getting ready to send out its first leaves. This is a reminder of how it looked last year. And you can see that my Brugmansia Sanguinea is starting to sprout again from the bottom. This is the bushy plant in front of the ensete. My Canna Red is starting to regrow from the ground. Again, this is a picture of what it would look like last year. And you can already see the distinctive pattern of the Canna Cleopatra leaves emerging. This little bit of green growth here is actually part of my Salvia Amistad, while the spider lily growth that is emerging is probably likely to be from the new bulbs I planted rather than surviving from last year, although I have had one regrow in the past. In the trough I've got some poppy seeds that have germinated. There is a mix of varieties, but the only one I grew last year was the Danish flag. My variegated Brunera does have some unvariegated leaves, which I'll need to keep an eye on because they may need to be removed if it doesn't get going. My larger ensete hasn't quite woken up yet, but the smaller one here has got a new leaf starting to emerge now. So hopefully it won't be much longer for the big one. And my Musa sycamensis, which died back over the winter, now has quite a good leaf here from the pup. You can see here that this banana has a lovely red stripe through the leaf. And quite a few of my Musa basjus are starting to grow a second leaf now. Now, unfortunately, quite a few of my palm trees have spear pulled this spring. Spear pulling is normally a sign that the palm tree has died. You can watch my previous video on this if you want some more information. However, there are some examples of palm trees that have survived a spear pull. So for now, I'm just keeping an eye on everything in hope. And in the fernery, I'm going to be planting the new plants that I bought from the Gardeners' World Spring Fair. I have been warned that slugs particularly like this fern, so I have planted it in its pot with a layer of Vaseline around the edge, and I'm hoping that will give it some protection. And I've now also got quite a bit of emerging growth from some of my other ferns in this area, such as my Osmunda regalis, Dryopteris affinis, my tree fern, which I actually grow in my bog area. And unfortunately, my fernery also seems to be a favourite growing place for Bracken, which is a really difficult weed to control. Just like the bindweed that likes to grow in the same area as my self-seeded morning glories. In this case, I wait for them to grow a little bit bigger so I can be sure of the leaf shape. This Acer was also an acquisition at the Gardeners' World Spring Fair. And I've also taken the plunge into planting some other plants out into the garden now, like this Nicotiana Sylvestris. This is a beautiful plant that can grow very big in 1 year. And I can't wait to show you the flowers. And then I'm also planting out one of my Persian shield plants, which I grew from cutting over winter. If you haven't already seen my profile plant video on this, then please check it out. I'm hoping that the purple will complement the pink in my pink cordial line nicely. And then finally I'm going to be planting out my ricinus. This is another large leaf annual which grows very quickly and is brilliant to grow in a tropical garden. If you're looking for other big-leafed inspiration, both the Ruum and the Tetrapanax also make fantastic tropical plants. My Ruum is spilling out over onto the path, so I am going to be a bit ruthless and cut back some of these leaves to clear the pathways. If you ask my husband, he'll tell you I'm butchering the plant. However, I have decided that it's much better to keep my pathways clear because they do get very overgrown in this garden very quickly. So I'm also doing the same thing for my palm tree, which is Trachycarpus wagurenus. I'm just taking a few of these leaves off, which are in the way of the path. It does distort the shape slightly, but that won't matter once it gets taller. And the same thing applies for my Cordyline australis. This has been growing at face height for a couple of years now because it decided to grow a double head rather than concentrating on putting a bit of extra height on. So I finally decided to be ruthless with this and cut it right back. So it looks a bit misshaped now, but at least I can pass the path more easily. And it should grow taller and recover its shape in no time. So you can see now it's much easier to get past my ruin. And the path past the Trachycarpus is now clear. So this mimosa here hasn't done very well after the cold winter that we've had this year, and you can see that it's starting to die back here. So I've decided to take a few cuttings just as a precaution and a backup in case I lose the whole plant. My mimosa is normally a hardy plant here in Hampshire. However, I think it's because of the particularly long-lasting frost has just caused some damage, then the whole plant is just not doing very well at the moment. But there are still some good green branches, which is what I've used to take my cuttings. I've not attempted cuttings from this before, so this is new to me. I've removed all the lower leaves, and I'm attempting it using 3 different methods. One in a brown bottle filled with water, one in a sealed box with sphagnum moss, and one in my aeroponic propagator. And I'll give you an update on these later to let you know how they get on. Earlier this week I shared with you my video on pollarding Paulonia tomentosa. And later this week I'll share with you a video on how I built this gazebo, so make sure you're subscribed to me so you don't miss these videos. And don't forget you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook or on my website.